We will have plenty more Lefties Losing It content with my next guest, including looking at the way a New York Times reporter helped dox hundreds of Jewish people right here in Melbourne. But first, though Kamala refuses to do an interview, she did, for just a minute, answer a question without the benefit of an auto cue, and it did not go well. Here she is asked about how she plans to pay for these policies she's announcing. See if you can work out the phrase her advisors have clearly drilled into her head.
In terms of the tax credits, we know that there's a great return on that investment. And when we increase home ownership in America, what that means in terms of increasing the tax base, not to mention property tax base, what that does to fund schools, again, return on investment. I think it's a mistake for any person who talks about public policy to not critically evaluate how you measure the return on investment.
Return on investment. In the full clip, she said it 4 times in about 40 seconds. It's like a kid cramming for an exam. Just keep repeating it until it sinks in. Joining me now is Sky News host, the US Report, never miss that on Fridays, and also Sunday mornings on Outsiders. James Morrow. They hit Joe Biden in the basement for much of the last presidential campaign. They have a different tactic with Kamala, but it's arguably even more underhanded.
Well, what have we been now? 3 weeks, I think it's been, since Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and the rest of the Democrat old guard knocked on the door of the Oval Office and said to Joe Biden, Joe, your time is up. And yet we have seen virtually nothing come out of the Harris campaign in terms of real media. And the clip you just played, Rita, is the reason why. I mean, this is the most shallow candidate I have ever seen approach the national stage here. She is all talking points. What she is underneath those talking points is some really, really hard left ideology. I mean, I was prepared to think that maybe she was, just drifting with the wind in California. No. She actually believes this stuff. We saw this with the lunatic price control stuff. We're seeing it with this. And, phrases like return on investment, well, that just gives her a lot of cover, because she can say, oh, no. Well, you see, we don't need to actually make the numbers stack up. It'll have some payoff down the road somewhere. And so, it's all a sham, Rita.
It is. Meanwhile, in Chicago, businesses near the Democrats' National Convention venue are boarding up their shops to prevent damage from rioters, protesters, other violent lefties. The Democrats' convention begins tomorrow. Joe Biden is expected to speak on the first night. And these major protests are already underway in the city centre. We've got groups, pro-Palestinian groups, pro-abortion demonstrations. The left seems to have an extremist problem, James, that's been normalised for far too long. And sadly, some of those radicals aren't just in the streets, they're in the party.
Well, Rita, come on now, let's be fair. I mean, you remember how during the Republican National Committee they had to board up all the windows to make sure that rioting Republicans didn't go and smash the city apart, right? Oh, no, wait, sorry, that didn't happen. This is the thing, every time the Democrats get together, even if they're doing something that's supposed to be like, for their own side, they have this hugely destructive streak. That's the only word that I can think of here. I mean, I remember being in New York for the 2020 election when Joe Biden beat Donald Trump. But, they were boarding up all the windows down Fifth Avenue, down Madison Avenue, down in Soho, because they were worried that if Trump won, there were going to be, the vanguard of the Democratic, tolerant, peaceful left were going to come out and show how they felt about this. And this continued through the Black Lives Matters riot in 2022 or in 2020. This is a long, long thing with the Democrats, with the left, arguably going back to the French Revolution, frankly, Rita.
Well, yeah, let's not have a history lesson right now. But you're so right. I was there in New York in 2020, and I was shocked by how many shops, buildings were boarded up. They'd learned from experience, and as soon as Joe Biden was declared the winner, it came down. Those protections
the boards came down,
because they weren't They weren't worried about the left writing any longer. Now, let's have a look at this video from a frustrated voter. They took to TikTok to blast the Biden-Harris administration for failing to prioritise hardworking Americans over illegal immigrants.
But I need my president to tell me why I worked so hard all these years, all these decades. Couldn't get a business loan, but I bust my to get the money to create my business. And we got immigrants coming here. And they're getting money. Money! We're doing nothing but just being here. It's not right, and I want answers.
James, there are many clips like this on social media, on different platforms, and often they're heart-wrenching.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, her sentiment is not unique, unfortunately. This is what we see in the last 3 or 4 years. We've seen something on the order of 10 million illegal aliens come into the country. We know that there are only the most cursory checks on the ones that actually do encounter border guards, with the mass killers and all sorts of other people who have been revealed to have been let into the country. And it's shocking, too, because we know that the U.S. is now spending, I've seen one statistic that says as much as $450 billion on all the housing and clothing and everything else for these groups. And people, who are working hard are trying to meet the rent, trying to, as this woman is, start a business, make it, do the American thing, do things right. Look at this, and they're rightly furious. And I think this is where the Democrats have a huge problem. They used to be the party that would represent people like that woman, and now they've just abandoned her.
They have, and if she doesn't vote for them, they say she's not really black. So that's pretty much what they think of segments of the voter base. Now, let's talk about this New York Times reporter. This story is astonishing. New York Times reporter was behind the leak of a WhatsApp group of Jewish creatives, which led to its members being doxed, harassed, in some cases threatened by pro-Palestinian activists in Australia. Now, Natasha Frost, a New York Times reporter based in Melbourne, downloaded and shared 900 pages of content from the chat that was launched by Jewish professionals in the wake of the October 7 attacks, sharing them with a pro-Palestinian individual she was writing a puff piece about. Now, Frost insists, she had nothing to do with the ugliness that followed. James, I spoke to some of the victims of this doxing. Some of them had to close or move their businesses. Some moved from their home. What action has the New York Times taken against this so-called journalist?
Well, it'll surprise you to learn, Rita, virtually nothing. They said that they've taken appropriate action against the journalist, but we don't know what that means. I mean, is there a note in her file? Does she not get an invite to the Christmas party this year? Who knows? But the crazy thing is, too, that the reporter herself put out a statement, Rita, where she said, I really regret that this happened. This has put me in danger. Like, hello, you put all these hundreds of other people in danger, and you're the victim here? This seems to breach an awful lot of journalistic ethics, too. It's one thing to get, the WhatsApp group. That's the sort of thing that people might report on. But then to share it with a subject who is likely not going to have positive intentions with that, that's just really beyond the pale. It's absolutely shocking. As you say, some of the cases, people have actually, as you say, had their businesses had to close, they've had to move suburbs, their children have been under threat. And again, it just goes to show how crazy it is, Rita. In 8 years, we've gone from, hey, it's okay to punch a Nazi to, hey, it's okay to dox a Jew.
The very same group. By the way, the very same people.
Exactly, the same people.
Promoting.
It's one of Kamala Harris's Venn diagrams.
Don't start with Kamala and her Venn diagrams. Goodness me. Now, Jeff Blahar made this point on this scandal on X, and I think he speaks for many. He said, you either forward 900 pages of private conversations to an anti-Israeli activist, you're writing a praiseworthy piece, out of intentional malice or out of a stupidity so destructively boundless that you should be fired instantly for your unsuitability for the job. No in between. I think that sums it up. It's either was done out of malice or pure stupidity, and I would think both those scenarios deserve a sacking. I mean, the damage that followed this was astonishing. It impacted so many people in a really severe fashion. Now, I want to ask you about Argentina's Trump is being called that, President Javier Milei. They've released a new video in honor of the country's National Children's Day.
Nuestro propósito es que todos los niños crezcan en un ambiente sano y seguro, lejos de quienes promueven la ideología de género, atentando contra su integridad.
Very interesting. That's not the sort of messaging we get in our schools. It's almost the polar opposite, James.
I'm just shocked by that. It's like, where do we all get online to go to Argentina? This is simple sort of good sense, or it used to be simple good sense, but now it seems like, Argentina is leading the way on this stuff. And I just note, to bring it back around to the Democrat National Convention, which we spoke about at the start of the segment, compare and contrast this here in Argentina and, their reverence for children and the family with the fact that the Democrat convention is proudly going to have outside a big old truck where you can sign up to get a vasectomy or an abortion, which is like tells you everything you need to know about where these two sides of politics are. No wonder, of course, the left absolutely hates Milei, because he's talking about, family and children and all of these things, which to them, they want to break down because they don't like the family. Families are like, cells of resistance against the state and their ideology. They can't stand it.
Absolutely, and they predicted all sorts of doom and gloom if he was elected, and everything thus far seems to be going particularly well in Argentina. He's really done what Trump, I guess, intended to do in his first term. He has just stripped the bureaucracy. He has gone through, axed departments, and is really having an incredible impact on the country in a very short period of time.
Yeah, I mean, and you look, not just the axing of departments, but you look at actual things like, inflation, the performance of the economy, just going gangbusters. It's a great growth story now.
Absolutely. James Morrow, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thanks, Rita.